is one of my favorites. And the reason it's a favorite is for this reason. I do talk radio quite a bit. I've done it in this area. I've also done other parts of the country. And when I do talk radio in a secular station, which happens every once in a while, mostly it's Christian stations, but once in a while I talk radio in a secular station. You usually, with the way talk radio usually works, you usually go in and meet the host about a half an hour before you go on the air. So you kind of get to know each other a little bit, at least in terms of style, before you go on the air directly. That's usually how it's done, not always, but usually. I did some talk radio in Winston-Salem on a secular station. No, it's probably more about 15 years ago. And the host of the radio station said, "What questions do you think you're going to get?" We had 1 hour of calling. I said, "One question I know I'm going to get is where did Cain get his wife?" Because unbelievers think this is a question that's going to stump us. And he kind of laughed and said, "Nobody's going to ask a stupid question like that." Third caller, where did Cain get his wife? Right? This is not a stumping question. It's a very simple answer. But the point simply is that the world doesn't want to hear the answer because they think in terms of today. Right now, it's not good to marry a close relative because the genetic depletion of mankind has gotten so far, we become like pedigree dogs in a certain sense. Our gene depletion is very, very narrow, so that when we marry people that are like ourselves, we tend to even deplete the gene pool further. And I'll explain that a little more when we talk about races in a moment. Okay, so Cain married his sister, and it's not a problem. With a broad genetic capability in the beginning of Adam and Eve, having great genetic diversity, it's not a problem to marry his sister. So Cain got his marriage. And the Bible's pretty clear on this, okay? It talks about one race, talks about Adam and Eve, and it says they had many sons and daughters, not just 3 sons. Some people would have us believe, but in Genesis 5:4 it says they had many sons and daughters, and the Bible doesn't give us a number, but historically Josephus, who is a Jewish historian, gives us a number, and I don't know if the number is accurate enough. He said something like about 70 children over the time that Adam did live 930 years, which is plenty of time to produce that many children without a real problem. So we have the concept of 2 parents of all mankind, and I'll come back to that in a second with the next question. And then sons and daughters, and from those sons and daughters they had to intermarry in the beginning. The gene pool is broad enough, so it's not a problem. But later on it will become narrow to the point that God finally tells Moses, don't marry a close relative to the Israelites. Before that, well, let me give you, well, why wasn't it a problem? Was the problem, for example, what's the relationship between Abraham and Sarah? Half brother, half sister. Okay? So the relationship wasn't a problem in those early days.